Internet, and welcome back to my reviews of the Infinity Saga leading up to Avengers Doomsday. Last time we covered Iron Man 3, and now we continue our journey through Phase 2 of the MCU, with what I consider to be the Kingdom Hearts chain of memories of the MCU. Forgettable, but crucial to the overall story. Today, we're taking a look at Thor the Dark World. Released on November 8th, 2013, Thor the Dark World is directed by Alan Taylor, who also directed Terminator Genesis and several episodes of Sex and the City, The Sopranos, and Game of Thrones. Alan Taylor took over directing this film because Kenneth Branagh dropped out, and he wanted to make this movie more grounded than his 2011 predecessor, and was inspired by his work on Game of Thrones. Chris Hemsworth returns as Thor, as does Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Anthony Hopkins as Odin, Rene Russo as Frigga, Knuckles the Echidna himself Idris Elba as Heimdall, as well as most of the Asgardian crew, except for one casting change. Flynn Rider and Shazam himself Zachary Levi takes over the role of Fandral due to scheduling conflicts with Josh Dallas. This also marks the return of Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, Kat Dennings as Darcy Lewis, and Stellan Skarsgård as Dr. Eric Selvig. And joining the cast in this movie is the Ninth Doctor himself Christopher Eccleston as the film's main antagonist, Malekith, the ruler of the Dark Elves, along with the same guy who played Killer Croc in 2016 Suicide Squad, as another Dark Elf who becomes one ugly motherfucker to go after Thor. I compared Thor the Dark World to Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories because the gameplay is terrible and impossible to get through, yet it is crucial to the overall story of Kingdom Hearts. This film is the same way. It's one of the more forgettable entries in the MCU, yet it is essential to the overall story as seen in Avengers Endgame. There is a scene in Thor Ragnarok that reenacts the events of this film, in the style of the Ember Island Players episode from Avatar The Last Airbender, with Matt Damon, Dr. Alan Grant himself Sam Neill, and Chris Hemsworth's brother Luke. Now that I gave basic introductions to this film, it's time for me to give my spoiler-filled thoughts on the second entry in not only Phase 2 of the MCU, but also the story of the true God of Thunder, not unlike Raiden from Mortal Kombat. This is Thor the Dark World. This is the first film not to use the Paramount logo as it is 100% distributed by Disney, along with a brand new Marvel Studios intro that was used throughout the rest of Phase 2, and even Captain America Civil War, before switching to the modern logo with Doctor Strange. The movie begins with a narration from Odin revealing a story from eons ago of how Thor's grandfather waged war against the Dark Elves of Svartalfheim. The leader of the Dark Elves, Malekith, plans to use a weapon known as the Ether and unleash it upon the Nine Realms. The Ether is actually the Reality Stone, the third time we see an Infinity Stone in the MCU, as we see the Space and Mind Stones with the Tesseract and Loki's Scepter in the Avengers. The Power Stone first appears in Guardians of the Galaxy, and an orb that acts as a MacGuffin throughout the entire movie. The Time Stone is first seen in Doctor Strange, as it is contained in the Eye of Agamotto. And lastly, the Soul Stone in Avengers Infinity War, guarded by Red Skull that requires a sacrifice in order for one to obtain it. A major event that occurs in this movie is the Convergence, a cosmic event that occurs every 5,000 years. During this event, all 9 realms are in alignment. This causes portals between the realms to appear at random. So say you go to your local Starbucks to get yourself a pumpkin spice latte. By the time you walk out of there whistling the entire soundtrack of Frozen, you end up on Asgard. That'll be the only time where Aperture Science handheld portal devices will no longer be needed. After a major battle against the Dark Elves, Malekith is defeated by Thor's grandfather, and the Ether is sent away to a realm that nobody can reach. The Dark Elves then go into suspended animation, like Shadow in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and the entire Nostromo crew and Alien vowing vengeance upon Asgard. In the present day, 2013, months after the events of Iron Man 3 is confirmed in the first handful of episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Loki is in prison for his crimes on Earth as seen in the Avengers. At the same time, Thor and his friends are in the realm of Vanaheim battling a group of invaders after the reconstruction of the Bifrost Bridge after its destruction in the previous Thor film. It was the power of the Tesseract that enabled the Bifrost to be rebuilt. One of the warriors, 3, Hogun, actually comes from Vanaheim, and there's a victory celebration back on Asgard. And Odin even has ravens that function similar to the ravens in Game of Thrones. Not so much owls from Harry Potter. And Thor often visits Heimdall asking about Jane, who he longs to see. I mean, he was initially sent to Earth in the Avengers to stop Loki, and he didn't have time to check on her. As how Jane and her crew are doing, Dr. Selvig was apprehended by British authorities after being caught at Stonehenge with his clothes off in an image I don't want to show here as it would get my channel demonetized. But Dr. Selvig did send Jane and Darcy to London, home of Gun headquarters in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, to investigate anomalies related to the Convergence. And Jane is going on a date with another guy, yet she hasn't heard from Thor in a very long time. All while she has trouble deciding what to order at a restaurant in London. There are instances where children toss random things into the portals, like shoes and Darcy's car keys. Sometimes they come back, and sometimes they don't. It would be a terrible idea to try this trick out with your wallet. Otherwise, you'll be in big trouble. And we see that Darcy has been spending a lot of time with an intern named Ian, who she kisses during the final battle in Greenwich. There's even an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. set after the events of this film, where Coulson's team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents investigate what went down in Greenwich. But it's Captain America the Winter Soldier that has dire consequences for the entire MCU. Especially Grant Ward being revealed as a loyal member of Hydra and a traitor to Coulson's team. Jane is swallowed up by one of the portals, and she encounters the ether and it enters her body. But not in a way like how John Hurt's character was the host of the dreaded xenomorph in Alien. She just absorbs it and spends the rest of the movie on Asgard trying to get it out of her. Something that Rocket does with ease in Avengers Endgame. This awakens the Dark Elves from their slumber, and now everyone has a target on their backs. Thor reunites with Jane, who's briefly pissed with him for not speaking to her in 2 years and for being in New York during the events of the Avengers. The local police try to apprehend everyone, but Jane unleashes the ether, which proves to be very dangerous. And so, Thor takes Jane to Asgard, where she spends a good chunk of the movie, before dealing with stage 4 cancer and becoming the mighty Thor in Thor Love and Thunder. I used to think that Thor the Dark World was the lowest on my ranking of the Thor movies, but that all changed with Thor Love and Thunder. I don't hate Thor the Dark World, but once I give my final thoughts, you'll see why I put this film on the lower end of the list on my ranking of the entire MCU, excluding Disney Plus shows. Thor takes Jane to Asgard so that the Asgardians can do something about the ether absorbed into Jane's body. Odin warns Thor that the ether will not only kill Jane, but also pose a huge threat to Asgard as we know it. Meanwhile, Loki is chillaxing in a cell reading a book while all this is going on. And we see that Loki has mommy issues all throughout the movie, especially a certain gut-wrenching scene which we will get to soon. The Dark Elves are alerted to the ether's location when they are awakened by its absorption into Jane's body, meaning they have to track her down and kill her. And the same sumbitch who played Killer Croc in 2016's Suicide Squad allowed himself to be captured and turns into one ugly motherfucker. Killer Croc then frees the other prisoners except for Loki, and they start a riot. This allows the Dark Elves to invade Asgard with ease and try to take back the ether. And like her adopted son, Frigga can also project illusions, and during a duel against Malekith, Frigga is mortally wounded and dies from her injuries soon after. This enrages Thor to the point where he uses a bolt of lightning to send 1.21 gigawatts into Malekith's face, disfiguring the sumbitch so that it's still present by the time he regenerates into David Tennant. Funny enough, David Tennant plays a villain in Jessica Jones, and Matt Smith also plays a villain in Morbius. But Peter Capaldi never joined the Marvel Universe, but instead into the other DC Universe in the Suicide Squad. But a clip from the Suicide Squad made its way into Season 2 of Peacemaker. A funeral is held for Frigga and other Asgardians killed in the attack. A Viking funeral with flaming arrows and boats floating into Valhalla. Similar to what happened with Hiccup's father in How to Train Your Dragon 2. This is one of 3 gut-wrenching funerals in the MCU, along with Yondu in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame. But Thor does see his mother one final time in Avengers Endgame, when he and Rocket go back to 2013 to search for the Reality Stone in the time heist, so that they can blip everyone back to life. Thor asks for Loki's help to get to the world of the Dark Elves. The Dark World, if you will. And Loki even gets a much-deserved slap in the fucking face by Jane for his actions in New York. And he briefly returns into Captain America in one funny scene. But sadly, Chris Evans is not credited for this scene. And it's not an MCU movie without his signature humor. And lately, the humor has been hit or miss. Deadpool and Wolverine? Hit. The musical planet from the Marvels? Miss. Like seriously, a planet where no one can understand you unless you sing? That was very out of place. And how does education work on that planet? Are they sorted into 4 houses like Hogwarts depending on their vocal range? Ariana Grande, soprano, Billy Joel, tenor. And what about stage plays? Are they called talkies instead of musicals? The laws for the singing planet in the Marvels make absolutely 0 sense. God, I need a drink. Whiskey! I need a whiskey! I don't care what kind, just give me a fucking whiskey! Vodka? I said whiskey! There's no whiskey! Wolvie made off with the last of it, so you get vodka! God damn it, you yellow-clad bitch! I'll take the vodka then. Woo-wee! Just as potent and powerful as whiskey. Thanks, Deadpool. Now let's continue with Thor the Dark World. Loki is broken out of the Loki Pokey. That sounds like a silly song that Loki could have sang while masquerading as Odin between this movie and Thor Ragnarok. You put the Tesseract in, you put the Tesseract out, you put the Tesseract in, and you wield it all about. You do the Loki pokey by the way Thor is a clown. That's what it's all about. After breaking Loki out of the Loki pokey, Thor and friends steal a dark elf ship and make their way to a
secret tunnel through the mountains. Secret tunnel. Yeah.
This secret tunnel will get them to Svartalfheim, the Dark World. During this chase sequence, Loki provides more unnecessary commentary than every fucking character in Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, including Loki saying that Thor decapitated his grandfather. And I absolutely love this scene right here.
Loki?
If it were easy, everyone would do it.
Are you mad?
Possibly.
There's also another scene in which Dr. Selvig is doing a presentation on Einstein-Rosen bridges in front of patients at a mental ward, in which he stole Stan Lee's shoe to use as a demonstration. Back with Thor and Loki, they make it to Svartalfheim to bring Malekith to them and confront him for Frigga's death. Meanwhile, Jane's condition is getting worse. There is a theory going around that it was Jane's exposure to the ether that ended up giving her cancer in Thor Love and Thunder. We don't know if that's true or not, but it very well could be. Loki tricks Malekith into drawing the ether out of Jane as soon as he confronts the two brothers, and he seemingly betrays Thor and cuts off his hand, but it's just an illusion. Thor tries to destroy the ether with his trusty hammer, but it is indestructible. That's because it's an Infinity Stone, as revealed by the Collector at the end of the movie, and during the ongoing battle, Loki is seemingly wounded and he quote-unquote dies in Thor's arms.
Is he crying?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. That happens in the distant future.
Why is Thor crying? Quick,
Do not
tell me.
speak to her. Stop that. Eyes on me.
I swear this sumbitch dies more times than Kenny in South Park, especially his permanent death in Avengers Infinity War, before he becomes a variant who fucks up the sacred timeline according to the TVA. And is fully redeemed by the end of Season 2, and is set to return in Avengers Doomsday, because Tom Hiddleston's name was on a chair. After Loki's passing, if you will, Thor and Jane find a portal that takes them to London. Dr. Selvig is bailed from the mental ward where he stole Stan Lee's shoe. And there's a funny moment where Thor hangs Mjolnir on a coat rack. This was an improvised moment that stayed in the final cut. Same with Chris Pratt dropping the orb and picking it back up in Guardians of the Galaxy the following year. Except that was a blooper that made it into the final cut, instead of an improvised moment. Thor, Jane, Selvig, Darcy, and her intern Ian discover that Malekith plans to plunge the entire universe into darkness by unleashing the ether at the center of the convergence, which is in Greenwich. And Selvig has devices that are used to send matter to different worlds. And these devices are used by the heroes to create a bunch of multiversal shenanigans with portals to the 9 realms, without the need for an Aperture Science handheld portal device. Malekith arrives in Greenwich to begin his master plan as he and Thor have an intense battle. Thor ends up in a bunch of different places, such as taking the train to Greenwich and hopping across different realms. And we even see Darcy and her intern kissing, while being transported to different parts of Greenwich. The ether is unleashed into all the aligned convergence portals, but Thor seizes the chance to destroy Malekith so that Christopher Eccleston can regenerate into David Tennant. This happens as Malekith is crushed by his own ship while being impaled with Dr. Selvig's devices. This causes the portals to close and the convergence to end, and so the day is saved. Until Coulson's team has to clean up the mess in an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And until Hydra's uprising in Captain America the Winter Soldier. Thor returns to Asgard where he is congratulated by Odin for his victory against the Dark Elves. And once again, Thor says no to taking the throne before returning to Earth. Which is most likely where he stayed before joining the Avengers in Sokovia at the beginning of Avengers Age of Ultron. And we see that Odin in this scene is actually Loki in disguise. The real Odin was exiled to Earth in Norway before he dies in Thor Ragnarok. In a big credit scene, Sif and Volstagg encounter the Collector, played by Benicio del Toro, who was recently nominated for Best Supporting Actor for his role in One Battle After Another. One Battle After Another is a great movie that I personally recommend. The Asgardians hand the ether over to him, as it wouldn't be safe on Asgard, as having more than one Infinity Stone in the same room together would be disastrous. And as the Asgardians leave, we see that the Collector is after the other Infinity Stones, probably to give to Thanos. And in a post-credit scene, Thor and Jane are reunited on Earth as a frost beast from Jotunheim is going on a rampage in London, and that's the end of the movie. I'm giving Thor the Dark World a 5 out of 10. This movie, like I said, is practically the Kingdom Hearts chain of memories of the MCU. One of the weaker entries, yet is essential to the overall story. For the longest time, I considered Thor the Dark World to be the lowest in my ranking of the Thor movies, but now it's the second lowest thanks to Thor Love and Thunder. The villain was generic and forgettable, and it lacked depth. But that's not to say that this is by any means a bad movie. No, far from it. As I said in my review of Iron Man 3, Phase 2 is my favorite phase of the MCU. But I will admit that it was off to a rocky start because of this movie and Iron Man 3. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston were great as always in this movie, and the visuals are nice, even more so than Thor Love and Thunder. The signature MCU humor is there, and the fight scenes were pretty exciting to watch. I can't say I was disappointed in this movie. It's just one of the more forgettable entries that not many people would probably watch again in 2026. However, there are several films from the multiverse saga that let me down, like Eternals, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, The Marvels, and Captain America: Brave New World. All in all, Thor the Dark World is another fun adventure with your favorite god of thunder, before drastically changing genres in Thor Ragnarok. It's got everything you would expect from an MCU movie, but at the end of the day, it's just very forgettable with a generic villain that I probably won't likely revisit anytime soon. But the next film I'm going to talk about after this is one that I'd be happy to revisit for eons to come, as it's not only my favorite MCU film of all time, but also one of my favorite movies period. Stay tuned for my upcoming review of Captain America: The Winter Soldier coming soon, as well as all other exciting videos and projects coming soon. Till then, I'll see you all next time.